Good morning, I'm Jose Diaz-Balart. Our first focus this Monday, new airstrikes against ISIS and an acknowledgement from the president on intelligence failures that led to the rise of ISIS. Overnight, a fresh round of airstrikes pounded ISIS targets in northern and eastern Syria, according to activists on the ground. And for the first time, British warplanes joined the U.S. attacks on ISIS targets in Iraq, less than 24 hours after getting the green light from Parliament. But ISIS is far from retreating in Syria. It's advancing on cities close to the Turkish border, and in Iraq, the terror group is once again reportedly on the edge of Baghdad. On 60 Minutes, President Obama said the U.S. failed to see this coming.
Well, I think our head of the intelligence community, Jim Clapper, has acknowledged that I think they underestimated what had been taking place in Syria.
And a week into the president's expanded ISIS strategy, Speaker John Boehner raising the stakes, saying U.S. ground troops may be needed to defeat ISIS.
I think it's going to take more than airstrikes to drive them out of there. At some point, somebody's boots have to be on the ground. We have no choice. These are barbarians. They intend to kill us. And if we don't destroy them first, we're going to pay the price.
A new NBC News poll finds 72% of Americans believe the U.S. will eventually have to send in ground troops to defeat ISIS, despite the president's insistence of no U.S. boots on the ground. Let's bring in NBC's Ayman Mohyeldin, who knows the region and this enemy well. Ayman, good morning.
Good morning, Jose.
There's now been a week of U.S.-led airstrikes on ISIS in Syria. What impact have they had, do you think?
Well, I think they've certainly slowed down some of ISIS's push in some of the areas. It's slightly begun to weaken their hold in positions that they've held, where they were really trying to create havoc, if you will, on some of the local populations. I can't say that this has degraded their capabilities. It doesn't seem to have necessarily made them retreat entirely. They still are very much present on the ground in Iraq and inside Syria. But you see that there is some territorial shrinkage in the area that was under their control.
And Ayman, I'm just wondering, when we talk about that they seem to be increasing their movements, and specifically in Iraq, also in parts of Syria, though.
Well, they certainly are still capable of fighting. And, you know, there's been intense shelling taking place in the city of Kobani, which is on the Turkish-Syria border. That is what led thousands of refugees to cross that border. But they're also still very much present inside Iraq. And as you were saying in the introduction, they still have a presence of fighters not too far away from Baghdad. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're prepared and capable of launching an attack on Baghdad itself. But when you have, by the estimates of the intelligence community, about 15 to 20,000 fighters spread across that area, you can imagine that their fighters are still very much on the ground. The U.S. has been bombing them from the air. Certainly has killed fighters, but not enough to say that it has completely degraded its capability to fight.
Ayman, I want to take you over to Afghanistan. The U.S. has been following the developments in that country. Today, there's been an historic handover of power. What can you tell us about this new president?
Well, that's a very important development. Obviously, Ashraf Ghani is a person very well known to the West. It's certainly going to at least bring in a new era, according to many of the people I've spoken to recently about that in and around the area, who are optimistic about him taking over the helm of that country. But more importantly, not just him as an individual, but this agreement, this power-sharing agreement. Keep in mind that there was a dispute following the elections between him and his rival candidate. But what has emerged is that they were able to put aside their differences. They were able now to create this power-sharing pact. And that in itself is groundbreaking in Afghanistan. It is a transition of power, a peaceful transition of power. The question now is going to be whether or not they're going to sign that bilateral agreement with the United States to keep troops in Afghanistan. And all indications are that President Ashraf Ghani is going to sign that bilateral agreement, which would be welcome news for the U.S. Instability in Afghanistan, according to him.
Absolutely. NBC's Ayman Mohyeldin, good to see you. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. And I want to bring in former Congressman and retired three-star Admiral Joe Sestak, former director of the Navy's Anti-Terrorism Unit and former National Security Council Director for Defense Policy. Good to see you again, Joe. How are you?
Good to be with you, Jose. Thanks.
Thanks. Let me start by getting your reaction to what the president said on 60 Minutes. How did the U.S. intelligence community get it so wrong on ISIS?
I don't think they did. If you remember, back in January and February, the head the general of the Defense Intelligence Agency, actually testified before the House and the Senate that in 2014, ISIS would take over large swaths of territory. In fact, at the time he had testified, they had already seized Ramadi and Fallujah, 35 miles from Baghdad. I think it was pretty obvious from his testimony that they had the capability, and even Jim Clapper said that. And there they were 35 miles away. So I think it was slow on the part of the entire administration to assess that what they had to do in order to address this threat.
And explain that. Take me into that a little bit, because so you're saying that the intelligence community did not get it wrong, and yet we're dealing with a situation now where it seems as though there was a delay.
Yes. If you remember, Jim Clapper said that they underestimated their will to fight. But he said they have the prowess in order to do what they actually did, and the capability. And the general in charge of the Defense Intelligence Agency actually said they would seize significant areas in Iraq in 2014. And when you have this force occupying Fallujah and Ramadi back in January, well, 35 miles from Baghdad, it's pretty obvious that something's amiss. Now, if you remember, all the media and everyone was calling them al-Qaeda, and then they changed their name. But I think at that time, thinking through what the implications might be, might have better addressed this issue from where we are today.
And Admiral, let's put up that NBC News poll again, and it shows that 72% of folks say the U.S. will probably eventually have to send in ground troops to defeat ISIS. So if that same poll finds Americans support U.S. boots on the ground in Syria by 45 to 37% margin, are U.S. boots, you think, on the ground in the future the only way to ultimately defeat this group?
No, we should not put any direct combat troops into Syria. Look, our objective in Iraq, first off, is very clear and can be accomplished, that with our artillery from the sky, our aircraft, and reconstituting the government forces of Baghdad and the Kurds, they can do the ground forces that drive out ISIS. In Syria, our objective there is really to make sure the United States is safe from any planning that ISIS might do. And if there is a safe haven that's to be destroyed there, that has to be done by those moderate rebels that were arming 5,000 of them, which is inadequate to do that. It has to be upwards of 13 to 15,000. That is correct. That's why our objective should be stated more clearly for what we are going to do in Syria. We should not be denying them a safe haven. We should be denying them the safety from which they can plan against us. And we do that by cutting off the mother's milk. That is the money that ISIS gets from selling the oil. So in my mind, we have to better state the clear objective of our safety from ISIS in Syria, but safe havens only by Turkey, Jordan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and by the moderate forces. They're the ones that have to deny a safe haven.
Admiral Joe Sestak, appreciate your time. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me.